Have you ever noticed how some people react very differently to relationships ending? For some people, a breakup is painful, but for others, it feels like their entire world collapses. A text goes unanswered, someone pulls away, a relationship becomes uncertain, and suddenly it triggers panic, anxiety, and a deep fear of being left alone. That reaction is often not about the present moment. It's about something much older, something deeper, something psychologists call abandonment trauma. Abandonment trauma can shape the way you love, the way you attach to people, and the types of relationships that you choose. It can make you cling to the wrong people. It can make you put up with behavior that you shouldn't. And it can make you mistake emotional chaos for love. So in this video, we're going to talk about what abandonment trauma actually is, what an abandonment wound is, how it affects people psychologically, why it often leads to codependency and unhealthy relationships, why narcissists and avoidants are often drawn to people with abandonment wounds, and most importantly, how you begin healing from it. And I'm also going to share some of my own story because this is something I've personally had to work through. So let's get into it. What is abandonment trauma? Abandonment trauma is a deep fear-based psychological response to the actual or perceived loss of an important caregiver or emotional bond. It usually begins in childhood when a child experiences situations where they feel emotionally unsafe, unwanted, or unsupported. This can happen through things like parental separation or divorce, emotional neglect, inconsistent caregiving, the death of a caregiver, unstable home environments, growing up with emotionally unavailable parents, or childhood abuse. Any experience that makes a child feel unseen, rejected, or emotionally alone can create a deep imprint on the nervous system. And this is important to understand. Abandonment trauma doesn't always come from someone physically leaving. Sometimes the person stayed physically present, but they were emotionally absent. They didn't meet the child's emotional needs. They didn't provide consistent safety, attention, or reassurance. And when this happens during early development, the child often internalizes the experience. They don't think my caregiver was limited. Instead, they think something must be wrong with me. So the child develops core beliefs like, I am not enough, I am easy to leave, love is unstable, people always leave me, I have to earn love, I cannot fully trust anyone. And these beliefs don't simply disappear when we grow up. They quietly shape how we experience relationships as adults. So what is an abandonment wound? An abandonment wound is the deep emotional imprint left behind by abandonment trauma. You can think of abandonment trauma as the experience and the abandonment wound as the scar that it leaves on your mind, body, and nervous system. An abandonment wound is often subconscious. You may not walk around every day thinking, I have an abandonment wound, but it shows up in your patterns. It shows up in who you choose, what you tolerate, how quickly you attach, and how strongly you react. How hard you fight for people who do not fight for you. How easily you abandon yourself just to stop someone else from leaving. That is why people with abandonment wounds often struggle with low self-esteem, fear of rejection, hypervigilance, people-pleasing, clinginess, emotional withdrawal, difficulty trusting, self-sabotage, and unhealthy relationship patterns. So the abandonment wound is not just about pain from the past. It becomes a lens through which you experience the present. How does abandonment trauma affect people psychologically? Abandonment trauma can affect almost every part of a person's emotional life. It can create anxiety, depression, insecurity, and deep trust issues. It can also dysregulate the nervous system. This means that situations that might feel neutral to someone else can feel extremely threatening to someone with abandonment trauma. For example, if someone takes longer to reply to a message, a healthy nervous system might think they're probably busy. But a nervous system shaped by abandonment trauma might think, they're losing interest, they're leaving me, I've done something wrong. This is called hypervigilance. Hypervigilance means constantly scanning relationships for signs of rejection, withdrawal, or abandonment. And that constant emotional alertness can be exhausting. Over time, it can lead to anxiety, panic responses, emotional instability, mistrust, difficulty feeling secure in relationships. It can also influence attachment styles. Some people develop anxious attachment where they become clingy and fearful of distance. Others develop avoidant attachment where they keep emotional distance to protect themselves. And some people move between both. There is a strong connection between abandonment trauma and codependency. When someone grows up feeling emotionally unsafe or neglected, they often learn that relationships require constant effort to maintain. They learn to keep the peace, to please other people, to avoid conflict, to overgive, overfunction, and prioritize other people's needs above their own. This is where codependency often begins. Codependency is an unhealthy reliance on relationships for identity, self-worth, or emotional stability. A codependent person often feels valued when they are needed. They may believe that their worth comes from fixing, helping, rescuing, or supporting other people. On the surface, this can look like compassion, but underneath is often fear. Fear if they stop giving, if they stop fixing, if they stop being useful, then they will be abandoned. So many people with abandonment wounds do not just fear losing other people, they abandon themselves first. They suppress their needs, boundaries, and emotions just to keep relationships intact. So many people with abandonment wounds do not actually know how to exist in relationships without self-abandoning. They prioritize other people's comfort over their own truth. They stay too long, they excuse too much, they forgive too fast, and they tolerate dynamics that slowly destroy their self-respect. And because this pattern is often trauma-based, it often feels normal to them. It's not healthy, not peaceful, not good, just familiar. And familiarity is often what trauma mistakes for love. When a person carries unresolved abandonment trauma, they often do not have the internal tools to regulate the amount of pain they are holding inside. So they often look for ways to numb it. This can lead to unhealthy coping behaviors such as overeating, binge eating, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, compulsive sex, sex addiction, attention addiction, relationship addiction, workaholism, or constantly jumping from one person to the next. These behaviors are often attempts to numb emotional pain, escape loneliness, regulate anxiety, fill an internal void, gain temporary relief, or feel wanted, chosen, desired, or in control. For some people, food becomes comfort. For others, alcohol or drugs becomes a sedative for emotional pain. For others, sex becomes validation. It becomes a way to feel temporarily wanted, temporarily connected, and temporarily chosen. But the problem is that these coping mechanisms do not heal the wound. They only distract from it. And often, after the high, comes the crash. More shame, more emptiness, more dysregulation, more self-blame, and often more abandonment of the self. So if you've ever used something external to soothe something internal, that does not make you weak. It means that your nervous system was trying to survive in the only way that it knew how. But survival is not the same as healing. So why are people with abandonment wounds drawn to unhealthy relationships? One of the most painful parts of abandonment trauma is that it often pulls people toward the exact relationships that reinforce the wound. This is why so many people with abandonment issues end up with avoidance, emotionally unavailable partners, narcissists, controlling people, inconsistent people, or people who love bomb, withdraw, breadcrumb, and then destabilize them. Why does this happen? Because trauma is not drawn to what is healthy. It is drawn to what is familiar. If emotional inconsistency felt normal in childhood, then emotional inconsistency may feel strangely familiar in adulthood. If love had to be earned, then you may feel deeply pulled toward people who make you work for it. If you grew up chasing emotional safety, you may find yourself still chasing it in adult relationships. Psychologists call this repetition compulsion. It's the unconscious attempt to recreate old emotional dynamics in the hope that this time the outcome will be different. So what happens? You meet someone emotionally unavailable, part of you feels activated, part of you thinks, this feels intense, this must mean it's real, this means I care. But often, what feels intense is not love. It is activation. It is the nervous system recognizing an old emotional pattern. And this is why healthy love can feel boring, unfamiliar, or even suspicious to people with abandonment wounds. Because peace does not create the same chemical chaos. And if chaos is what your body associates with attachment, then calm can feel strange. But that does not mean that calm is wrong. It means that your nervous system may need retraining. So someone might unconsciously choose unavailable partners in the hope that if they can finally make this person stay, it will heal the original wound. But unfortunately, it just repeats the pain. Narcissists and controlling partners are often very skilled at identifying emotional vulnerabilities. They may unconsciously recognize when someone fears abandonment, and often they exploit that vulnerability. They may create cycles of love bombing, withdrawal, mixed signals, silent treatment, emotional manipulation. These behaviors create what could be described as micro-abandonments, small moments of withdrawal or rejection that trigger panic. For someone with an abandonment trauma, this can create an intense emotional dependency because the same person causing the emotional distress is the person they seek comfort from. This dynamic can form powerful trauma bonds that make leaving extremely difficult. I want to share part of my own story here because abandonment trauma is not just a concept for me. It is deeply personal. The relationship between my mother and the person who I believed to be my biological father ended when I was 3 years old. After they broke up, I never heard from him or saw him again. And I carried a deep-rooted abandonment wound my entire life because of that. I never healed from it, and it affected all of my relationships into adulthood, both romantic and platonic. I always chose avoidance. I always chose emotionally unavailable people, and I was constantly left heartbroken, disappointed, or left with egg on my face. My relationship choices led me into codependency and trauma bonds that were extremely unhealthy for my mental health. And when you have an abandonment wound, you often do not realize that you're replaying the same injury over and over again. You just think, this is my type, this is bad luck, this is just how relationships are. And the reason I understand this topic so deeply is because abandonment trauma has shaped my own life in ways that I didn't fully understand until recently. A year ago, out of curiosity, I did a DNA and ancestry test. And what I discovered turned my life upside down. It turns out that the person that I thought was my biological father was not. My father was someone completely different. And it turns out that this person did want me. He did not abandon me. And I also found out something surprising. He's also Chinese. So finding out at the age of 39 that I'm half Chinese completely threw me, because I'd been led to believe my entire life that I was of a different heritage. And that took time to process. But the most healing part of that discovery was finding out that I was wanted. that I was loved, that the story that I'd carried for most of my life was not actually the truth. And that has been part of my healing journey over the past few years. I share that because sometimes the wound we carry is built around a story we form very early on. And even when new truth arrives, the emotional imprint can still take time to unwind. Healing is not just about learning new facts. It's about teaching your nervous system that the old pain is no longer your identity. And everyone's abandonment story looks different. For some people, it comes from parental loss. For others, it comes from emotional neglect or childhood trauma. But the common thread is the same. The nervous system learns early on that connections can disappear. Another painful part of abandonment trauma is self-sabotage. Sometimes the fear of being left becomes so powerful that people unknowingly behave in ways that can push people away. This can include picking fights, testing partners, becoming overly suspicious, withdrawing emotionally, creating conflict, overreacting to minor changes, clinging too tightly, shutting down emotionally, assuming the worst, creating distance before the other person can, or constantly seeking reassurance until the relationship becomes strained. This is the self-fulfilling prophecy of abandonment. The fear of abandonment causes behaviors that eventually lead to the relationship ending. You fear being left so deeply that you start searching for proof. And if you look hard enough for something, then often you'll find it. Or worse, you may create it. Not because you're manipulative, not because you're broken, but because your nervous system is trying to gain control over what feels uncontrollable. If I leave first, I cannot be left. If I push them away first, I stay in power. If I keep testing them, maybe I'll finally feel safe. If I expect abandonment, maybe it will hurt less. But of course, it does not make you feel safer. It just keeps the wound alive. And that is why healing abandonment trauma requires more than insight. It requires learning how to respond differently when the wound gets activated. So now I'm going to go through a step-by-step guide on how to heal from abandonment trauma. Save this. Healing abandonment trauma requires patience, self-awareness, and compassion. Step 1, acknowledge the wound. Healing begins by recognizing that the fear exists and understanding where it comes from. Step 2, separate the past from the present. Not every moment of distance or conflict is abandonment. Learning to recognize triggers is essential. Step 3, identify your triggers. Notice situations that activate fear or panic. Your triggers might include delayed replies, someone needing space, emotional distance, inconsistency, being criticized, feeling ignored, feeling deprioritized, relationship uncertainty. Start noticing your patterns. Journal them. Track them. Pay attention to what activates you. Pay attention to what activates panic, shame, urgency, or clinginess. Understanding patterns creates awareness, and awareness creates choice. Step 4, build emotional regulation tools. When the abandonment wound gets triggered, your body often reacts before your mind can think clearly. So you need tools that help you regulate your nervous system. These might include deep breathing exercises, mindfulness, grounding techniques, somatic work, walking, exercising, journaling, meditation, or sitting with your feelings without acting impulsively. Healing is not just cognitive, it is physiological. You need to teach your body that discomfort is survivable. Step 5, reparent yourself. This is a huge part of healing. Reparenting means learning to give yourself what you did not consistently receive. Learning to give yourself the validation, compassion, and emotional safety you may not have received earlier in life. That means becoming the safe adult your younger self needed. Telling yourself, I am here, I am not leaving myself, my needs matter, I can soothe myself, I can protect myself, I do not need to beg for love, I do not need to abandon myself to keep other people. This is how self-trust gets rebuilt. Step 6, challenge the beliefs the wounds created. Abandonment trauma creates distorted beliefs like everyone leaves, I am hard to love, I am too much, I have to earn love, love always hurts, peace is boring, or being alone means I am unwanted. Those beliefs need to be challenged, not with toxic positivity, but with truth. Some people leave, but not everyone does. Some people fail you, but not everyone will. Being alone is not the same as being abandoned, and healthy love does not require self-betrayal. Step 7, learn boundaries. Boundaries are essential for healing abandonment trauma, because many people with abandonment wounds are terrified that boundaries will make people leave. But boundaries do not ruin healthy relationships. They reveal unhealthy ones. You need to learn that saying no, slowing down, asking for clarity, protecting your peace, and walking away from mistreatment is not abandonment. It is self-respect. Step 8, stop choosing from the wound. This is one of the biggest shifts. Focus on partners who demonstrate consistency, emotional availability, and respect. Do not choose people based on chemistry alone. Do not choose people based on intensity. Do not choose people based on potential, and do not choose based on how hard they are to win. Do not choose based on whether your wounded inner child feels obsessed. Choose based on safety. Choose based on consistency. Choose based on character. Choose based on emotional availability. And choose based on how your body feels around them. Choose based on whether you can be yourself without shrinking. Step 9, grieve. A lot of abandonment healing is doing grief work. Healing often involves grieving the experiences and losses that created the wound. Grieving what happened, grieving what did not happen, grieving what you needed and did not receive, grieving the relationships you stayed in too long, grieving the versions of yourself that thought that suffering was actually love. Grief is not weakness. Grief is how pain moves. Step 10, seek professional support. Therapy can be incredibly helpful for processing trauma and building secure attachment. Sometimes abandonment trauma is too deep to heal through self-awareness alone, because healing is not just about insight, it's about integration. And sometimes we need help learning what safety actually is. Healing abandonment trauma does not mean that you never get triggered again. It means that you respond differently. It means that you stop chasing what hurts you. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop confusing anxiety with chemistry. You stop abandoning yourself to keep other people comfortable. You stop begging for clarity from people committed to confusion. You stop trying to earn love from those who benefit from your insecurity. And instead, you become more grounded, more discerning, more honest, more self-protective, more peaceful, and more secure. You stop seeing love as something that you have to win, and you start seeing it as something that should meet you in mutuality. So my final message is, if abandonment trauma has affected your life, I want you to hear this clearly. Your pain makes sense, and the patterns you developed were not proof that you're broken. They were survival responses. But survival patterns are not the same as healing. Healing means learning to stop abandoning yourself. It means recognizing that love should not feel like panic. Healthy relationships feel safe, consistent, and supportive. And the most important relationship you will ever have in life is the one that you build with yourself. Because when you become someone who no longer abandons yourself, you stop accepting relationships that do. Thank you so much for watching this video. If it resonated with you, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, like and subscribe for more healing content. Thank you so much. I love you. Have a blessed day. Take care. Bye.